Good morning, good morning. Oh, look at you all. Look at this. A nearly full half of a room. It's awesome.
Yeah, mean.
It's awesome. This is a tough room because it's so big. So yes. Good morning. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. This is not a room for silent sitting. This is a room for calling out and heckling, but not joy. Never joy, okay? Never Joy. We have the amazing Joy Apple. She is here to talk to us about creating modern intranets using Microsoft Teams and SharePoint. I mean, how else would you make your intranet modern? I don't know. We're going to find out. Please have cupcake on the way out afterwards. I will be talking about this frequently. But in the interim, Joy, the stage is yours. Round of applause for Joy. I'm making a good one. A good one. Okay.
All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So happy to be here. This may go a bit fast. I have a hard time cutting back on slides. We'll see how it goes. But we're going to be talking about creating modern intranets using Microsoft Teams and SharePoint. And I may have also snuck in a little bit of Viva Connections. And yes, Yammer. Ooh, Yammer, right? Oh, yeah, it's going to be great. If we have never met before, we probably haven't because we live like, an ocean apart. My name is Joy Apple. I am a Microsoft MVP, and I am Chief of Operations for a consulting company called Pate Group. I've been doing the SharePoint thing for about 15 years now. This is the most exciting time to be working in the Microsoft product stack. This stuff is just amazing. I never would have dreamed that SharePoint would be where it is today. Fabulous. You can connect with me on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn QR code if you're lazy like me. All right, let's talk about it because we got stuff. Do you guys have stuff at work? I have stuff, right? We have all kinds of stuff. We have company public data. That's my phrase that I like to use because it feels very clarifying from the business perspective. It's company public. It's the things that we, as the worker bees at work, create that everyone in the organization might need access to. It could be instructions, policies, procedures, safety information, forms. I need to move my office. I need a new laptop. I need PTO, please. I want to go on vacation. Then we have content that's more department private, might be project private. Those are the things that's going to be a little bit more secure that not everyone in the organization should have access to. It's going to be employee data for our human resources workers. It's going to be maybe departmental SOPs. It's not a breach of security if people see it, but we're decluttering search, right? Drafts, things people don't need to see yet. Forms that have been submitted might have personally identifiable information on it. So we have the stuff. And then we have things we need to put around the stuff, ways we need to work with the stuff. We need security. We need streamlined ways to talk and to communicate about the stuff. We need forms. We need to be able to go through reviews. We need approvals. We need engagement. Now more than ever, we need community engagement at work. We work with our coworkers more than we see our friends and families most of the time. So it's important to have engagement. So the intranet is really the entry point to all of those things. And how many of us have been working in the IT space for more than 5 years? More than 10 years? More than 15? More than 50? Gotcha, okay. I still have deployment planning sessions with customers, and I send out questionnaires just to get information. What do you need? What do you do? What do you work? How do you do it? And I still get responses that says, you say intranet, and I don't know what you mean. And it still shocks me, because I'm like, how do you not know what an intranet is? But there are still companies that don't have them. There are still people that have not been exposed to that in work. But it's your entry point in the modern world to the stuff and the things we do with the stuff. So what that can begin to look like when you start with SharePoint. Woohoo, SharePoint's my first IT love, okay? I am joy of SharePoint, right? I love it. And Teams, which is almost as good as SharePoint. It's my second love now. Either of those applications you can use as a portal to get to your Office documents, your PDFs, your personal work stuff that you put in OneDrive. You can get to all those other amazing Microsoft 365 apps from SharePoint, from Teams. I mean, the modern SharePoint web parts are pretty fantastic at surfacing up ways to interact with these good app content. You can get to those third-party applications that are out there. We love our third-party apps. And then the other SharePoint sites. Like in the course of our business worker days, they may need to go to regulatory websites. They may need to go get information other places. And we kind of want to reduce that context switching thing, right? So we give them a link to go get to those things. We can put tabs in Teams to take them to those things. But a lot of folks are still in this world. Any of you still in this world where those structures are deep, 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 not necessarily flat and wide? There's a song, right? Deep and wide. There's an ocean flowing deep and wide. A lot of our architecture is still nested very deeply. So when we start approaching a modern intranet solution, the first thing we need to do to take advantage of all these great tools and apps, Teams, is to flatten out that architecture, which can be terrifying. I was once, it was pre-COVID, I was at a hotel ballroom kind of doing a spiel, and I put up a slide that said no folders, and I had a table of women in the back that screamed. They screamed because I said no folders. Okay, you can have folders. You're not going to kill kittens, as Sue Hanley once said, if you use folders. But if they start going really, really deep, you're going to have deprecated functionality. Search is not going to be as respective as the content if you go more than about 4 levels deep in a library or you have several subsites, right? Page load time is going to be slow. There's going to be impact. And Microsoft 365 is built for flat. Jay Leask with AvePoint and I have a session that we do that says the modern architecture is flat. And we go this whole like flat earth scenario, and we have a lot of fun with it. But if I'm working in maybe I'm working in SharePoint Online, but it was migrated from on-prem, just left as is, right? Which is going to get it to the cloud. That's a good first step. But we still have those subsites that go kind of deep. Those subsites are typically where those functional business areas were coming together to work, right? We probably had broken permissions because we had kind of teams of people working inside of those subsites. Well, now I can't take something awesome like Teams and attach it to that. I've got to be at a top level site in order to do it. So I have to take those lower level sites, I have to break them apart, and I raise them up. I make them flat. So now everybody gets a team, right? We have collaboration. We can use things like Planner. We can start to use those other Microsoft 365 applications. But when we're building out an intranet, maybe we're coming off of a file share. We have heavy file share usage still. We've got folders and folders and folders and folders and folders and folders and folders. You know that's the F word in SharePoint, right? Just throwing that out there. It can be rather intimidating to take that and think I'm just going to flatten it out. No more subsites. No more folders and 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 folders. In fact, this was literally what was in my head when I heard Microsoft say, we're going to flatten the architecture. No more subsites. Stop. Well, I've never been a proponent of nesting folders. But the subsite thing was like, ooh, that's very different. Now, I mean, sites are just going to be floating around in the Ethernet. How do I deal with that? But then if you think about it, it's still been awesomecompany.sharepoint.com/site/IT/business-applications/exchange/helpdesk, right? We still have the logic of the URL that's inside of our tenant that is binding that all together. So we don't have to panic. There's still logic there. There's still structure, right? We still may not find out the ultimate answer to life, the universe, and everything, which is, what? 42. But when we start unnesting that architecture, not only do we get better performance and we're able to take better advantage of the things that Microsoft has created for us, the Teams, Planner, all the great things. But if you are a SharePoint admin, any of those in the room? Where are my people? You're here. Okay. When you go to that admin center, you actually see a true representation of all of the sites that you're working with. Right? It used to just be the tip of the iceberg, and you had to dig in and actually go spelunking inside of those sites to find out how many subsites are there, how are they broken out, what's going on here. It's not the case anymore. And typically, if we were breaking permissions and going deep in our site structure, We typically had a lot of help desk tickets for this doesn't work. I can't get access. Why don't I see this? Why isn't this here? Why can't Joy get into this subsite? We had all those tangled up knots of broken permissions. When we flatten it out, a lot of that goes away. That's fantastic. Fantastic. First thought too, maybe a third thought would be, whoo, that could be a lot of sites we're gonna run out. We get 2 million now. I mean, that's not a challenge I'm asking you to accept. Go exceed it. But you get a lot, you have a lot of space. And we have the hub site feature inside of SharePoint Online now that lets you take those sites that are related by topic and by purpose and join them together into a hub structure where they're related, and you get some really great features with that. And if you're coming from that on-prem SharePoint, this is a great time to go through and look and clean up. No time like the present. Because if you migrate it, now you have change adoption, now you're training people, now you're making sure things working online. When do we find the time to go back and clean up? Probably not, right? So migration is a great time to assess what you still need, what should be archived, or what could just be deleted. It's a scary word. And again, this is my hub site slide. I tried to cut it, but I couldn't. If we're using hubs much inside of SharePoint, are we enjoying that relationship and the way that works? Right? We're not building those physical constructs anymore in the architecture. We're relating them together. I came out of the government world, and we would reorg every 6 months, whether you needed to or not. It was a nightmare. Thank goodness for AvePoint's DocAv to help me do those migrations when we reorged. I don't have to do that anymore. Don't tell AvePoint. It's fantastic. I just reassociate. And when we do that, our architecture becomes, well, kind of like playing with Legos. Right? I can take that site and put it wherever I need to. I have a modular architecture. It's very flexible, it's very dynamic, and it's very functional. Because now I'm working with Microsoft 365 groups that is a security service to all the other applications the members of that group need. But wait, there's more. Because SharePoint and Teams, remember hashtag better together. It is better together. Because SharePoint is still the document management tool for all of Microsoft 365. Teams comes along and says, while you're working on that documentation, while you're doing that work you do day in and day out, let's make communication a little bit easier. Let's bring communication and collaboration and put them together. Teams is for teamwork. SharePoint is for our document management and more, right? Those communication sites are beautiful portals for news, for information, for all that good stuff. So who had a lot of fun in the beginning of Teams talking about uppercase teams or lowercase t team sites, right? There was a lot of that going on for a little while. Traditional team site usage has been more of the collaboration side of document management. We had our departments, our groups, our project people working on stuff. Those are traditionally the more secured site on the intranet, right? We have our working group of people. Everybody else's access denied. They don't see it. They don't know it's there. The content in there is not searchable and findable for those people because it's none of the business. If you need it, we'll put it on a communication site later, right? So it just totally makes sense then when Teams comes along that it's going to marry to a team site. Now, sometimes we get so comfortable in Teams and a lot of that work's going on there anyway, inside of that group, we may not come to this team site a whole lot. That's okay. But it is still a fully functional team site with the ability to have news, links, you can get to your documents, cheat, you can know if it's a Teams connected team site or not. If you see a general folder sitting there in documents, it's a great option for people. And if you have departments that are very wide in scope, I'll pick on human resources. They may have a team site for everyone in the department, and then one for benefits and one for wellness and one for other things that I don't even know because I'm not an HR person. And they can have that primary team site for their internal team news, conversations, and then just break out to go wherever they need to from there. So it's a good portal, it's a good landing page. If you've got team sites in SharePoint right now, not connected to Teams, you're like, oh, we want to. For a while, there was some confusion. I have to go create another one. Maybe it's still classic, not sure what to do. If you modernize those classic team sites, add a group to them, groupify. If you groupify your sites, you can teamify your sites straight from the Teams interface. So you don't have to have duplication of those sites, bring them right in. Microsoft has done a great job of answering the demand for templates, right? You can have templates. You can create your own templates in the Teams Admin Center. So every time a certain type of team is needed, is it for a project, is it for a particular department, they can have the structure already there that they need and then can add on if it doesn't get them all the way. But Teams is for teamwork. So how does Teams help? Well, first we have to communicate and educate people and go, okay, you've got your team. So now if you need to communicate with your team, we do that in the team, right? You don't need to do those emails anymore that are one-off and maybe don't include everyone that's on the team. Because when I put my messages inside of Teams, everyone that's there is part of the conversation. They don't have to reply. You ever send that email and you send it to 3 people and 5 minutes later you go, oh crap. So you go forward it to the other 3 people that probably should have been on it. You're a little embarrassed because I totally forgot about you, but in a nice way, I promise, looping you in. They reply over here, the other are replying over here, and you're playing monkey in the middle because now you're having to communicate between those separate groups in this beautiful forked email thread. But if I put that in the channel, one and done, right? It's fantastic, it's there. Channels are so much more conducive to chat. When I'm inside of Teams, I'm much more likely to interact, to respond, to ask questions, to be part of that conversation. If you're the 7th person in a reply all, and I'm probably not going to reply all because don't you hate it when it's a huge reply all thing that's going on? So you might just reply to the one person, leaving everybody else out. So Teams brings a lot of that to the table. It is searchable-ish. I mean, let's be honest, it's getting better, but it's searchable-ish. New word, new word, new word. And your content and your communications are organized together inside of your Teams channels, right? So if you have a lot of folders in your Files tab in Teams, think about breaking some of those top levels out and making them channels because your channel is a folder in SharePoint. You're already creating that organization. And that lets you group together your conversations and your content. I hate going into Outlook, regardless of which version of it is, and finding the paperclip that is somewhere in a 20-thread long email. I hate it because Outlook is a crappy document management system. But if I put it all into Teams, I know where to go. I talked about this already. It's just better than email for that internal. What do we mean, though, when we say internal? Maybe probably not the whole company internal, but if it's for those people that I work with all day long, every day, that's my internal. It's the people that I know. It's the people that I have that closer working relationship with. It may not be the person in HR that intimidates me and I need to make a very formal request. That's probably still more appropriate to be an email. But that's not I know they don't do the loops so much, but that's not necessarily my inner loop. That's more of a distant relationship at work. Now, my company, we cheat because everything we do is a project. Every project gets a team. Every scope of work we do for a customer and client gets a channel. So if I'm going to do deployment planning, there's a deployment planning channel. And if I need to talk to the team about deployment planning, I'm going to do it in deployment planning, not in the migration, not in the training, not in the custom calendar channel, right? It's logical. If I have documentation, I'm going to drop it in there. I'm going to tag the channel because tagging the channel gives better context than tagging the whole team. Yes, it is the team, but this is what we're talking about. So my devs can tune out. It's fine. I can go back. I find that. And then my customer emails me back. I can take that external piece of communication, forward it into the channel internal so everyone on the team sees it, everybody on the team's up to date, and we're not having to play the email game anymore. Woohoo! At Pate Group, when we implemented Teams 5 years ago, we saw an 85% reduction of internal emails. That's huge, and we're only about 20 people. It's huge, which means the weight of my inbox is on my customers, my clients, my partners, and my vendors. The weight of Teams is my internal team and my employees that I'm communicating with every day. It's a really nice division there. It's much cleaner. We may all know this, but it's still here because sometimes we have folks that are coming in because we're coming up to speed with how Teams and SharePoint work together, right? But every time I create, I'm going to turn my back to the room for a moment, but every time we create a channel inside of Teams, it is a one-to-one relationship with a folder. Why did it have to be a folder? Because it is the F word in SharePoint. But it becomes a folder inside of the documents library inside of SharePoint. And if this is a highly collaborative place for my internal teams on the working side of the intranet, that means all of their work content, drafts, day in, day out, fast and furious collaboration is going to live here. But I have a whole site, right? On my left nav, I can come in. It's so close I can't read it. I can come in and I can create a contracts library. I can put the finished assets in a separate library, still tab to it in the appropriate channel of Teams, get it out of the collaborative area so it's not being cluttered up. I might have different security around this library because it probably should be read-only, or contracts, if they're finalized, probably shouldn't be edited, right? I can create a really good workspace for my team using SharePoint and Teams because they're better together. So every team gets the channel with the Files tab. Every channel gets the Files tab. Files is in the folder. Get in there. Right now, I'm not thrilled. There's not discrete metadata. I love metadata between those Files tabs because they're all in the same document library. That's another big advantage of taking those more finished pieces of information, pulling them out into their own separate library, because now I can tag them with discrete, meaningful metadata, which is going to improve them being found in search. Love search. But wait, once again, there's more. Doing okay, doing okay. Viva Connections. Who's using Viva Connections at work? Not as many hands as I thought. That's okay. That's actually kind of exciting. Who remembers, was it Ignite of 2019 when Microsoft announced the SharePoint Home app, right? I was like, oh my gosh, ship it, ship it, ship it, ship it, ship it. I need it, 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 I need it right now. Because my stuff's in SharePoint, my home page is in SharePoint, the news and the announcements of the organization are in SharePoint, but we're all living in Teams by 2019, 2020. Everybody's living in Teams, right? It's where we are, that's where our stuff is, it's where my chat is. A lot of communications departments are like, everybody's gonna go to Teams, nobody's gonna see the news, nobody's gonna hit the home page, nobody's gonna see the announcements, nobody's gonna see the holiday list on the home page. What are we gonna do? Viva Connections. Viva Connection takes SharePoint, the intranet, which in my mind, SharePoint and Teams are both pieces of your intranet, but it brings SharePoint in and it creates a single pane of glass experience for you and your users. So now I've got, and Sharon mentioned it in her session a minute ago, you know, on the left rail of Teams, I got Viva Connections that my admin can pin to the top so my users can come in and they can interact directly with the intranet from Teams, not having to hop all over the place. It's beautiful, but you get more than just that. When you're inside of Viva Connections, you're gonna get, or when you turn it on inside of SharePoint, you're gonna get a global navigation that's gonna follow your user everywhere they go. There's been some discussion, there's been some debate about how to best leverage that. But if you use that global navigation that's going to be on the left on every communication site, every team site inside of Teams, and you put the most frequently used links from your intranet navigation on that, the help desk ticket, the cafeteria menu if you have one, you can't work hungry, you need to know what's for lunch, right? If you get HR help, if you put those commonly used resources there, it becomes a very good situation for your users because everything they need is with them all the time. I get a lot more too, right? I can search intranet content from inside of Teams. If you have permission to see it, you can search for it from inside of Teams, and actually from inside of almost all of the Microsoft products now, right? Search has become very holistic. You get great custom dashboards now too. The dashboards are beautiful. The adaptive cards are a very powerful piece of functionality that has come to the intranet. But what must you do? Used to, you had to go to PowerShell hell for a little while in order to get Viva Connections installed. Now you can just pretty much click some buttons. Magic. You have to set the designated home site for your intranet first. You do that in the admin center. You pick on your site that's going to be your home site, and there's a little button that says make home site. Yes, please. Once that's done, you go back to the SharePoint side of the world, and there's a little, in the drop-down menu, set up Viva Connections. But of course, docs.microsoft.com, always up to date, has good information for how to do that. So now you've got Teams and SharePoint living very harmoniously. But what about all those notifications coming out of Teams? How are we doing on time? Let's look. I have a timer going. Good. It's a lot. When I was doing some deployment planning with a customer recently, I was like, what are your thoughts about utilizing Teams more formally, not just for chat, but expanding it out a little bit more and doing the Teams thing in Teams, because Teams is for Teams, for your teams. And they're like, I said, are you worried it's going to take the email clutter and just move it somewhere else? Yeah, they are. Because Teams rocks. But not everything should happen in Teams. Was anyone in the birthday panel for Teams yesterday where there were drinks and balloons and fun stuff, right? It was great. There were some opinions. Yannick always has opinions. Not everything should happen in Teams. It's like when we migrate to SharePoint, not everything should go to SharePoint, right? Some of that archive stuff, don't bring it over. Not everything should happen in Teams. When I say Yammer, is your first reaction to roll your eyes? You can be honest. Any eye rollers? Anybody lying about it? Thank you for being honest, sir. Last year, I had to tweet a public apology to the Yammer team because I, too, was a Yammer eye roller. But then, during the pandemic, my husband and I went to our favorite little local Mexican restaurant. The bar was open, but spaced. You could have 2 people here, 2 people here, 2 people there. And I heard Teams ringing. It was about 8 o'clock at night. Where's my phone? Where's my phone? Oh my gosh, Teams. There's a Teams emergency, SharePoint emergency, something's going on. It's not me. I'm looking around. Who else has Teams? Who's using, you got to know. It was a commercial on the TV. But I was Pavlov's dog in that moment because Teams was ringing and I was jumping to respond. That's not healthy. You ever get that feeling where if I hear one more ding out of Teams, I'm going to drop kick my machine out of the window. That also is not healthy. So we have to think about it. Should everything be in Teams? Because if Teams is for teamwork, work is a big word there. That's where my tasks are coming from my boss. That's where I'm being asked questions. That's where I'm working. It's where I'm doing things that have discrete deliverables associated with it. But if it's a happy birthday announcement, I love birthdays. I think they're marvelous. This is still my birthday month. Every day in June is my birthday. Birthday rules. A friend and I have that agreement. Thank you very much. Thank you. So should I get distracted from working on a statement of work or getting a contract pushed through or drafting a policy because it's a birthday or the new cute, I love dogs. I have 2 dogs and a cat. Should I get distracted from work when somebody posts a cute picture of their dog? Probably not. So there's a place in the intranet family, those social, fun things. The goal is engagement and communication. That's Yammer, right? If I want to go interact with a broader audience, I actually have a security team at one of my customer sites that is desperate to talk to and engage with the whole organization. They've set up a Yammer community and it's going amazingly because they're making it fun. They're becoming approachable. They're highlighting important issues in a non-email way because it's way more fun. You got GIFs. I mean, come on. You can celebrate and share and engage across the organization. The modern Yammer web part is gorgeous on a SharePoint page, and you have the community app inside of Teams. Also inside of the Outlook Progressive Web Application, there's the community app. It's accessible. But when that notification comes from Yammer, there's not a weight associated. It's my boss. I need to do this. This is important. This is a task. There's a deadline. There's a deliverable. That's Teams. When the notification comes from Teams, I have respect for that. There's a deadline associated with that. When it comes from Yammer, or not, depending on how your settings are. Will it work with your company culture? That's important. If you're in a much more rigid, formal structure, may not be the right time, or it might take more work. How large is your organization? Is it going to be too much to have one more app to manage, and just maybe an org-wide team would be fine for this? Maybe notifications turned off or limited. We have options. If you create an org-wide team with a lot of different social channels, it is more work to manage those notifications because, again, it's Teams, and we're trained to Teams nowadays. Your Yammer notifications will be different. But one of the big advantages of that, if we're tired of notification overload, I don't have to join every Yammer community in order to go into it, engage, interact, respond. I can just step in, consume the content, and then step back out and never have to sign up for notifications. But then the communities that I officially join, I will then get the notifications that I request. So there are really good options for this. You know, it's not an all or one thing, right? The modern world, it's not one size fits all. And there are no cookie cutter solutions because we're in a place now where we can meet the social needs and the cultural needs of our organizations. So let's break down the architecture. This is the next to the last slide. SharePoint. Communication sites for company public information. Human resources should have one. The homepage will be one. IT, I mean, come on, we got information people need to know. It might be a fun, friendly place to put it. Then team sites is where I secure content that not everyone in the organization should have access to, and will more than likely be tied to a team, because that's where we go as a department to organize our content and our communication together in our channels. We work as a team here and we get stuff done. And then we can have Yammer bring us that more fun, social, not work demand content. It's work related, but it's the fun, the softer side of work, right? Okay. This is now the Q&A session. Anybody have any questions? Because I have a box I can throw at your head if you have questions. How fun is that? None at all? Hey. And you do want to talk directly into the microphone.
Yeah. My name's Ronak, and I work for HCL Technologies as a consultant for Teams and proposing these solutions. So when you spoke about Yammer and Teams, recently I've spoken to a banking customer, a large banking customer, and they do have Teams and Zoom in some capacity, but they were talking about productivity and adoption. And when you spoke about getting those social messages on Yammer and communication on Teams, for an adoption strategy, I spoke about to improve adoption, start sending job anniversary messages on Teams. So there is still a scope of, like one size cannot fit everybody. I think there is still a scope of using Teams to engage audience, to improve adoption, and then move to Yammer if there is a lot of adoption happened.
Yes. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. I've got a customer now. They have an org-wide Yammer. It's part of their homepage, but it's been kind of more of like the fluffy announcements, not necessarily the hardcore news. They just sent an email out Wednesday. They're going to be introducing Yammer to the smaller internal networks, is what they call them, and will help them move any documents over to the SharePoint site that connects to that Yammer community for storage. But they'll begin to transition to Yammer for that. So yeah, you can go where it fits, and it makes sense. If they're really trying to drive awareness and usage of Teams, you can start there, absolutely. It's a great perspective.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, yeah, okay. Gosh, whose head am I throwing it at? Yours.
Tony Pounder here. So there's a couple of things. One is you said taking the sub-sites out and promoting them to make a flat structure is great because the admins can then see all of the sites.
Yes.
Then we saw that when you create a private channel, the sites are hidden from the admins.
I don't think that's the case anymore. If that's not fixed yet, it will be fixed soon.
I just recently saw it in a live tenant, so if that's coming, that's great. That's wonderful.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah. The second point is we did a file migration for an organization who were literally just taking their first steps into using Teams, and the first thing they wanted to do was drag and drop emails, attachments into emails that they then send out to their external customers, and they were very disappointed to discover that you can drag them into Teams from emails, but you can't drag them back out again, and they were having to download and attach and looking at third-party solutions. They're just wondering whether or not that's Microsoft's conscious decision to prevent people or make it more difficult to send attachments because they want you to do.
I don't think there's any intent behind that. Microsoft is very much of the mindset that they want to enable people to work in a way that is productive for them. I would say more than likely that's just a feature that's not been prioritized over some of the other ones.
Okay.
I'm sure that's got to be out on the feedback portal. So I would go to the feedback portal. If you've not been to the feedback portal in Teams, it's a little question mark that's actually useful these days. Find, submit, vote, because the higher those votes go, the more attention they get.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, I hear that echoed from people a lot too.
So I've got one, Jim Love here. So doing SharePoint intranet is basically our bread and butter. But when we've got customers coming to us, it's normally always the marketing and communications department that comes up with the idea of SharePoint. Now, when we're talking about Teams and SharePoint, that kind of stuff, who in an organization should be owning that whole process, do you think?
Oh, okay. So you're consultants. I'll give you the consultant answer.
Right.
It depends. I see the same thing too. Marketing communications comes in, corp comms, they come in and they typically partner with IT. Sometimes HR is in that mix too. A lot of times it's HR and IT. And they're very focused on the SharePoint side, the look, the feel, it's gotta be gorgeous. Sorry, you can't have custom fonts yet. You gotta go through that. When it comes to the Teams piece, there's space for marketing and communications to have a voice there, especially if there is gonna be an org-wide team. But I would say that might tend to be more, I'm going to use so many cautionary words, that might be more of an appropriate space for IT to partner. I would say a group of champions from across departments in the organization to make sure that Teams is meeting the needs that they have.
I think it's important to clarify the intent of doing it all as well.
Yeah, yes.
And that will answer the question, who should own it. I think if you find out why you want to do what you want to do with it, then it should naturally come together who's owning the process.
Yep. What are the pain points? What are the problems we're trying to solve? Because if you can't answer those, you'll never know if you're being successful or not. Then you're just changing things for people and irritating them. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Good to go? Well, thank you very, very, very much.
Can I get a massive round of applause for Joy Apple? Huge round of applause. Yeah.